right, welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I have the astute pleasure and honor of having Mr. Dan Cuzzo out the visit. How you doing, Dan?
Hi, John. It's great to be back. Good to see you again.
Yeah, yeah.
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. I was excited when you reached out. We are in contact all the time, but when you reached out specifically and said, "Hey, I got a lot of new information. I want to start sharing this," I really got excited, and I made sure I
Mhm.
wanted to clear some time off. So, I won't hold us up. I'm excited about what we got to share or what you have to share. So I'm going to kind of pull up the notes I have here, and we're going to jump right in it. So before I start showing the pictures and we go through the videos, um, you label what we're going to get into is what is labeled or known as spiritual photography. Is that right?
Yes. I like to call it third eye photography because of the little eye that appears, but spiritual photography is the general name that covers like all the different effects that happen when light is interacting with our spirituality in photos.
Okay, okay. All right. So actually, you have several on your website, dancuzzo.com, by the way, of several pieces of your photography. But today we're going to talk about some specific ones. So let me pull one up as I ask you these next series of questions, and we can kind of maybe talk about them there.
Sure.
So let me share this first one that we have here that you have entitled "The Awakening," right?
Yep.
Okay.
The reason I call it the awakening is because a lot of us don't realize when there's light effects in photos that it's not just a camera, a flare, or a lens flare, and it's really a sign of nature, light, or the environment creating something special with our spirituality. Just like a lot of artists don't realize that there's inspiration that comes to them that's not just their own.
Mhm.
Some people call it a muse. Some people are very regimented and they say it's all from themselves. And I guess that's the least amount of inspiration.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, with spiritual photography, it's the same thing. You could pour your spirituality into any kind of art form, whether it's cooking or artwork or dance. But with photography, it's very unique because it's really only been noticed in the last 20 years or so.
Wow.
Some people call it the infamous green flash. Some people call it light codes in the New Age movement. And when we're talking about light codes, um, basically the wings around the sun in this photo, that would be my specific light code. Like it's the pattern that arises when my energy interacts with the sun.
Mm.
And the eye, which I would use to describe third eye photography, is towards the bottom.
Right
And
right
it
here.
has, yeah, it has a lens and it has an iris, but it's very dim in this photo because I was literally just awakening.
Mm.
It usually has two colors. This one is a green iris and a blue. Sometimes it could have three. The eye could have two colors, but basically, as people develop their spirituality, all of this becomes more defined. So this is my awakening. I happen
Wow.
to have had a pattern and an eye, but even if you just start with the eye, like everybody has a unique experience with spirituality and nature and themselves. And when they take photos, if you're lucky enough, and I say lucky enough because like I think it's a good thing, but if you're lucky enough to have a little green dot or a little colored dot in your photo, that's not a lens flare, most likely. It's not a
All right.
mistake. It's an example of how you have the potential to be a spiritual photographer.
Wow. That's awesome. And you got tons of these on your site. Um, so I'm gonna switch off here real quick, and we'll pull up this next one in a second. But I wanted to we'll pull the next one up and get it ready. But I wanted to ask a kind of talk about a few things you mentioned. Maybe you can kind of talk about how these colors, as we go deeper into this, the relation and connection of the colors and the chakras. As I pull this next one
Yes,
up. Okay.
I wrote an article, a brief article about it. But one of the things that isn't quite established or known yet is why the eye that forms. Um, and what I mean by the eye is that little lens that appears in the photo. Yeah, there's one right in the middle that you're scrolling through, that green and red eye.
Okay.
Why the eye is a specific color. And what I've found after 2 years of analysis is that, and also changing the color of my spiritual eye, by will or by studying my mental footprint,
Uh-huh.
is that it's connected to which chakra you're resonating with at the time. So if you go from the bottom, you've got red as the root, you've got orange as the sacral chakra, which is sexual energy, which is creative energy.
Okay.
Um, the above that is pride, the solar plexus, and I am simplifying this, but
Okay.
when I looked back to each of my photos with a different color eye, I was feeling those emotions related to the chakra. And when you look
Wow.
at photos, yeah, when you look at photos online, which I have studied, I have, spied all these different eyes in photos that they other people might not even realize, is
Right.
that you're really feeling those emotions when someone takes a photo with that color. And I you can imagine where I spied the orange eye, when someone's feeling very attracted. And
Yes.
when I took my own orange eye, I was thinking of someone that I loved at the time.
Okay.
And when you're feeling really rooted into your position, it could come out red.
Okay.
And conversely, all the way at the top at the violet, you've got Roy G. Biv, the spectrum. When it's purple, I was feeling very intuitive and spiritual and really focused on myself as a spiritual being, and I was meditating.
Okay.
So it goes through the whole spectrum, and it's really cool to see because I haven't established enough information to see that the colors of the eye are related to chakras in addition to the colors of the patterns, but the eye itself is definitely related to, like, the green is the heart chakra. You're the heart chakra. I could see it in your glasses, which is really neat.
Awesome.
We talked about this before, but whenever light goes through a lens, like, it creates energy sometimes, and it could be visible, and that's how the patterns are created. So it's a whole unique system, and the chakras are very much related. So I thought it'd be very important to point that out.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I just started a little bit of studying on chakras. I've known about them for over 15 years, but just going back to it has been interesting. So now this, what you're showing me here, is added another layer to kind of connect this with the external world. I was always thinking the chakra was internal, but so this is another one that I looked up that really caught my eye because I see the sun there and we interacting with water, direct reflection from the sun. But I see this green and this purple. So when you were first explaining this to me, kind of maybe share, because a lot of people who are maybe in spirituality or not, it may seem far fetched or they may just be seem too wild. But I wanted you to kind of explain when we look at these colors, are these colors coming up? Because you mentioned they're coming up or from the reflection of the environment being picking up our energy. So is it the environment picking up our energy, the camera also? Is it all of that? Like what is really causing creating these colors and these tones?
So that's a really good question, and I'm going to try to simplify it because I've been a little wordy before. Basically, the reason I call this third eye photography, in addition to spiritual photography, is that it's a co-creation between light, our own spiritual energy, and the elements.
Mhm.
So I've got a lot of water signs in my chart, which another thing to note is that go with the elements that you feel an affinity for.
Okay.
Um, so there are spiritual photographers that can get really amazing effects like Thor's hammer and dragons to come from literally lighting a fire and putting their energy into the fire, and it can change shape.
Wow.
But I basically do that for water. I meditate in front of a pool of water, which is one of my favorite pastimes, like when it's warm enough to do so.
Mhm.
Um, when it's cold enough, I do it too, but I'm not pulling out my camera, otherwise I'll freeze.
Right.
Um, but well, so what I do is I let my energy interact with the sun, interact with the pool of water, and enhance the environment. It actually changes the photo around and my vision of what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing. And that's where the spiritual vision comes in. Like you're able to achieve something that's closer to a higher dimension in a photo when your energy is interacting with the water. So this one in particular, if you
Okay.
notice the two colors, you have the green and the purple.
Mhm.
John pointed out the purple before, and it's that little dot over there.
Mhm.
And basically, that makes perfect sense to me because you're starting. at a position of orange and red, which is basically where my mentality was at the beginning, reflecting off the pool.
Okay.
And that's turning into green and purple, which is my heart and my spirituality, which is I'm trying to re-engage with spirituality at the beginning of the meditation.
Okay.
Um, so I want to show you something really cool, which is the same exact part of the pool of water looking completely different. John, if you could turn to the other photo, because basically this, give or take a few inches of moving over, this is the same pool of water a minute later in the same park on the same day.
Wow.
And as you could see, my orange and the sunlight has been reflected off of the plants. The energy has gone into the plants. The pool of water, the depths are filled with purple, indigo, and green in my heart. And
Hmm.
there's this bright light going across, which is part of the plant. And there's almost like a waterfall like structure with the sun going through the plants falling into the water all together. After, I don't usually meditate, but after just 1 minute of taking the time to organize my chakras and to
Hmm.
kind of express myself by co-creating with nature, it changes into a different form. So yes, you could say that, like, maybe I changed the angle a little bit on my cell phone, which as of now I'm a mobile photographer, but ultimately,
Hmm.
if I just do something as simple as take a deep breath
Oh,
and refocus myself, that literally changes the image that's going on. Like, so it's
wow.
very much connected to our physical, mental, and spiritual well being. So if you want to try it, whether you're a fire sign or a water sign or an earth sign would be a little bit difficult. Like the sun reflecting off the rocks, I think might be a bit of a challenge, but
Hmm.
maybe nobody's just one sign. So if you combine a
Right.
few elements, it would probably work. But basically, this co-creation is an art form. Some might call it a lens flare, and a lot of photography sites they don't even let you post stuff like this because they're like, well, what is it? It looks like an
Oh,
photo. Yeah, that's
uh-huh.
why I'm on Etsy, by the way. Like I just posted my photo there. I'm so tired of people rejecting my photos. They're like, you know,
Well, that's a,
especially, oh, sorry,
yeah,
continue.
no, I was gonna say, well, this is why you're doing this, right? Because a lot of people, um, even photographers, they're deeply into, images and artists and art. So, it's a lot of photographers that we look at their work, and the novice or person, they're like, oh, that looks weird, but to the photographer, they're like, no, did you see this lighting? But it's just that the spiritual side, they're not familiar with. So what you're doing now, I think, is huge because it's going to bring spirituality to that art form. And I believe those photographers, those artists are going to start seeing it because they've seen these lights forever, but no one doesn't seem, it seemed like they gave them a name and dismissed them. But now that you're saying that you can change or that these lights are coming from things in the
Right? That's
environment, that's what's so cool about it.
That's the hope. Do you have time for the bunny rabbit? I want to show that little green blob so that the people can see
Oh,
that,
let me pull that one up while you're
yeah,
talking there.
because basically the reason that I want to pull it up is
Okay.
because I want people to know that it doesn't have to look perfect in the beginning.
Okay.
Um, you can create an eye through exchange with the sun, through exchange with the moon. You could even do it with exchange with a street light.
Hmm.
You just need a source of energy and you need an interaction. And
Okay.
ultimately, your eye doesn't have to look perfect. But what's cool is you can actually have the iris of the eye change into little characters. I've had it change into like a spirit of the earth, like in my dad's garden. It's turned into a mermaid before. There's all these different things, and you could have fun with it. But if you
Okay.
have that rabbit photo, I'll show it to you
Yeah.
quick, and then we'll get back on the track here. Um,
Yeah. I'll go ahead and share it now. Just pulling it up here for us.
Thanks.
All right. There we go.
So as you can see, there's a little rabbit over there, and I wanted to get creative, so I pulled my green eye, which would have been full in the sun,
Hmm.
all the way over to the rabbit in the corner there, and you could see the orange going through the chapel, which also has its own symbolism of, I was considering somebody who was uh, anyway, the church has a symbol too. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
But this green, which is my heart chakra, was looking at the rabbit, which was her zodiac sign, and
Hmm.
so to me, this was so symbolic of what I was experiencing, who I was talking to, And this little blob, this is how a lot of people's eyes start out, and it's still beautiful, and it could still change, and it could still develop. So even if you have a little blob,
Wow.
like it still looks really good, and you can make a lot of your photos through sunlight or any other light you encounter. So thank you for this
Wow.
time. If you could switch back to the main program as we discussed, this was a little aside, but hopefully you
Sure.
get a little lesson in this the symbolism behind just what seems like a normal photo of a church, you know?
Yeah, no, that's great that you showed us that because I know you got tons of examples, but each of these are really helping. I think it
Mhm.
help viewers to understand this, at least open their minds to this concept because everyone is always seeing these lights. If you've ever seen a photo, you just dismiss it, but this is starting to say, okay, well, wait a minute, there's something to it. So let me kind of recap a little bit. In order to
Yeah,
even
thank you.
do whenever in order to do these from what um, you mentioned that in order to do these, number one, you just need some source of light, even if it's a street light or the sun, right? I think I've done one with the street light. Also,
Yep.
I'm hearing you mention that let's just reference the last one you showed us when you were moving the eye, right? Was that a matter of you moving the angle of the once you locate the eye in the actual photo and moving it and then take the picture? Like, are you able to see the colors before the picture, or is this like you take the picture, you see it after, and then you have to adjust?
Hmm.
Is that how you capture that when you say moving the iris over? So people can kind of understand. Is it a
Yeah,
matter of moving their energy or moving the actual physical medium that they're using to take the picture with?
it's a little bit of both. The
Okay.
further I'm using a mobile camera, so my phone camera is a Samsung Note 20 or something. So but basically, I'll just change the angle of the photo a little bit. But you
Okay.
also have to give strength to, and it sounds weird, give strength. Um, this is connected with your spiritual, mental, and physical health. So the
Okay.
further you get from a strong light source, the harder it is to maintain the eye.
Oh,
So when I change the angle and I move the eye further from the sun, I have to kind of give it energy so that it projects, um,
okay.
a formed object in front of where I want it. I won't go too far into it, but I will actually try to strengthen my spiritual energy by taking the lights, a photo of a street lamp that's far away, focusing on it and breathing it in and trying to create a green eye out of that street light.
Wow.
So there is like some very hardcore examples of how you could strengthen your spiritual energy, and it has worked. And I think the next photo you're going to show is very evident of what can happen when you actually do more of strengthening your spirituality and your interaction with nature and with your camera as well. Like I was just talking to John about how his laptop is showing spiritual energy through his eyes, and mine, again, the spiritual photographer, is not actually, there's no colors, behind my eyes for the most part. And I was talking about how, I have a laptop which is connected to another screen. It might just be too confusing. But in my earlier interview, when I had an interview on my phone, John was commenting there was this little blue dot that, rather it was a green dot that was it's projecting off my phone, and then it turned into a blue dot towards the end of the conversation. So it is connected to the chakra system. It is connected to how we're feeling, but we have to have a spiritual connection or like a more direct connection to the object. And apparently, my laptop isn't quite there yet. So it's again, it's still trying to figure out. It doesn't have to be exclusive to phones. Like I've recorded myself on a tablet and got spiritual photography.
Right.
Um, but when you get good enough, like literally, like I could see the light go through my glasses, and I could
Wow.
see, different. Like right now, my I could see two green lights. So I know my energy is there. It's just not showing up in the video. So there's a lot of different things. Like, and you talk about needing a light source.
Uh-huh.
And this is getting a little ephemeral, but
Yeah.
if you believe we are beings of light, like the
Right.
reason why with less and less light we can create the eye anyway is because we are feeding it our own light energy, like our own
Uh,
spiritual energy. So when I talk about growing spiritually, like I didn't always have see an eye, a third eye in my glasses. I always didn't see. I'm literally able to start seeing rainbows
wow.
around people and things. and then I could take a photo of it when I see that. And
Okay.
my guides will tell me like take a photo now, and then I'll take a photo and I'll see something that I didn't normally see. So basically, when you have spiritual vision, you can actually see things that have a more significance than if it was just a regular photo. So it's a really neat experience. And we don't have it now, but there was a nature sprite I took a photo of,
Mhm.
and there's one I took a photo of an angel. But the next one we show will definitely illustrate how it's not just some random lens flare. It definitely has a pattern. It has a reason, and it is here to express itself to us. And that's why I call it a co-creation.
All right. So here's what you were talking about. You titled it Easter blessing. So can you maybe
Mm,
describe the maybe two? I'm just catching on what you said before that in these instances, it's a for a little bit, it's a preparation before you take it, as far as an energy exchange or some type of charge, like you're saying, before you
mhm.
take the picture. So maybe you can explain how this one came about and what these images interpret.
Yes. Well, where your mouse pointer just was actually, that was pointed to me by other sources that said it was a mandorla. And I said, well, what's a mandorla? So I looked up what a mandorla was. And it's basically a shape that throughout biblical literature has been used to encapsulate the images of the saints and the
Mm,
and Jesus himself and different figures in biblical history. So
wow.
we have the shape around, and at the top there's a mandorla, which indicates some kind of angelic or spiritual presence that's watching over me. In
Mhm.
addition, I don't know if you noticed that the figure in the window of my parents' house, that's a bunny rabbit for Easter. So
Oh, okay.
it's that's why my friend calls that photo Red Jesus, because there's the red spiritual energy in the kind of a flower pattern. There's the rainbow, which is something that I've always sought after, like to get all the colors of the rainbow in one image, and the mandorla at the top with that little sprite in the center, which basically means that something is blessing this occasion. I'm interacting with light that's happy to be interacting with me. And if you're wondering why exactly the pattern is coming through, basically anytime light goes through a lens, there's an ability to be creative, to express an interaction with the objects and our energy. Um, as like you said, you get stronger. Like it could just be the lens of my glasses, and it'll express itself too. But it's very good to experiment. So like I did it with the glass of my front door. I experiment with the sunset on the front door, and you could do it on a pool of water. Like I said, you could have the energy exchange. There's all different ways of expressing, and you might even see like just rainbows pop up in different places, and you wonder like how does that happen?
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes it's literally just a pane of glass or like a spoon. The reflections are everywhere, and even if like you're a food photographer, like I have the affinity for water energy. So if I put honey or if I put soy sauce or if I put like just something on my food that has water
Right.
content in it, if I take a photo, that food will look amazing. So
Wow.
there's a thousand different things you could do when you put spirituality into the mix, and you just enhance the things you see. And we're looking at it through, and I'll be corny by saying this, the lens of love. Like
Okay.
we're loving ourselves, we're loving nature, we're loving the light, we're loving energy. And yes, you could do it through the lens of pain too. You could and that will create a different photo. But ultimately, like if we're healing, if we're growing as people,
Mhm.
it's all explanatory by the fact that once you can take spiritual photos, which most of us can, like I'll meet people and they'll be like, oh, is this one? And they'll be like, and sometimes it's a no, but a lot of times it's like, yes, it's the beginnings. I'll go to a healing, and before the healing, I'll take a spiritual photo, and then afterwards, I'll take another spiritual
Oh,
photo.
yeah.
Completely different, so much stronger. Even a good meal. Like if I'm really hungry and I take a spiritual photo and then I'll have a good meal, like the photo afterwards is like rainbows, it's sun patterns, it's everything changes when we're in a better mindset. And spiritual photography is no different. So
That's awesome, man.
there's all different types of spiritual photography, but the main two, which I'll just briefly say, is aura photography, which is more internal. You're taking a picture of the energy within somebody, And
Okay.
third eye photography, which is literally a projection. If I were to hold up my phone and take a photo, basically, um, and there's a light source shining through it, through the back lens of my camera, there is a legitimate green flash, a green energy that you could see, and it basically projects on wherever you're putting the camera. So it
Oh,
looks cooler in the photo, but I was really surprised when there was physical evidence that my phone was actually projecting, and that's what made me realize it was coming from the phone. It wasn't coming from
oh,
the sun. The sun was hitting the phone. It was going through, reflecting off the sun lens, and it was reflecting green. So it's an interaction between the person holding it, the phone, and the sunlight. But
oh, okay,
going
okay.
back to it, it's a co-creation and a projection of our own spiritual energy. So you might see a weird eye in a photo or a weird blotch in a photo that could be a lens flare, or it could be an expression of your spiritual energy. And regardless of whether you're super spiritual or just curious, it's still really interesting to develop. And eventually you'll get to the point where instead of enhancing the spiritual projection, you could disperse your spiritual energy like I did in that water photo into the surroundings, so you don't have this big pattern like you see here, which is a direct expression of whatever source spirit energy wanted me to see.
Mhm.
And you could actually just make the area around you more beautiful, which is actually a really good technique too. So whether you're a
Wow.
regular photographer who wants artistic value, or you're uh, what's becoming more popular, a third eye photographer,
Uh-huh.
you can experience light codes, or you could just experience making the scenery look that much more beautiful. So it's a really good art, and it is an art form. And I hope more people start realizing that, because it's got so much potential. And I'm just thinking of like what famous person is going to come out and be like, this is third eye photography. It's about chakras, and I'm just going to be watching it, and it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, someone finally caught on. Um, but I want to be a part of this regardless. I want to increase awareness at the very least. And
Okay.
then when some expert photographer comes out and says that that's the case, at least I could be like, nice, we're getting it. This can
Yeah.
become a tag like third eye photography, spiritual photography, whatever they want to call it,
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
is a different art form that we can actually utilize for so many different things that we never thought possible. So it's really exciting.
Oh, it
And
is. It is. Yeah, it is, man. Thank you so much. Wow, I'm looking forward to hearing more. Everyone definitely tune in. This is a very deep subject, and so once again, thank you for sharing this and spending some time with us, Dan. Because next time I want to see if we can go deeper into the light codes, even though you touched on them.
mhm,
That's definitely something I think can kind of draw people more, or kind of open this up to more, and then help people open their minds up more to it. And maybe next time also, I think Dan can be able to share some things about, like you mentioned, the other possibilities of how we can use this art form
mhm.
as something that maybe help us have more self-discovery about ourselves, more about nature, more about the unseen world. But I do believe that this is one of the different things um, that's signifying that it's a continual evolution of our
Yes, the evolution of the
consciousness.
species.
Yeah,
I think the animals are way ahead of us, but we're catching up into the
yeah,
spirituality and the co-creation with nature, most definitely.
yeah. You can feel it. Thanks totally. Once again, we're looking forward
Thank
to
you.
producing the next one. And once again, everyone, give a hand for Mr. Dan Cuzzo, great friend of mine, and we'll be looking forward to the next episode. In the meantime, you have a great night, and we'll see you soon.